Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll have an update of the state's wildfire season. Also tonight, a look at new guidelines for online marketing and advertising. And we'll hear about a revolution in engineering education. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Arizona Senator Jeff Flake says he'll give a $1,000 campaign donation to charity after learning that the money was donated to his campaign by the leader of a white separatist group cited by the gunman charged with killing 9 people at a South Carolina church. Flake was among several Republicans who received donations from Earl Holt of the Council of Conservative Citizens. The group's website was cited as an influence in an online manifesto written by the suspected gunman. Flake says that the money will be given to a fund that's set up to help families of last week's shooting victims. Arizona's wildfire season is here. Things have been relatively quiet so far compared to recent years, but the danger still exists for the outbreak of costly and damaging fires. Here to bring us up to date is KTAR Radio's wildfire reporter, our good friend Jim Cross. Jim, how are you?
Ted, good to see you again.
Is it me, or should we not be just surrounded by flames right now? This seems like things aren't happening like they usually are.
We're usually in fire season. I mean, we're in fire season now, but usually the worry concerns, start weeks ahead of this. The forests are usually all in restrictions by now. I can't remember the last year when all of the forests weren't in restrictions at this time. We have one forest right now, the Tonto, in campfire and smoking restrictions. We had a wet May, and we had what was left of those 2 hurricanes. The first one a little better off than the second one, brought some moisture into the state, made it one of the wettest days in May just off one storm. It was only 1/4 of an inch or so. We're better off than we have been in past years. This recent heat wave kind of baked out the desert, though, and that's what helped kind of light up the Kearney fire, or keep it moving, and that salt cedar out, and it took out 3 homes. But it could have been a lot worse. Those fire guys got on it quick with the tankers and the ground crews.
Kearney River fire, again, what, 70-some-odd% contained? That should be pretty much a done deal here in the next few days, right?
Pretty much done. The homes are out of danger. There were 2 or 3 days there where it was a big concern. It burned incredibly hot. It was very hot out there when we were there. It was as hot as Phoenix, and you were in a canyon. But again, they jumped on it quick, and it was probably the most dangerous fire we've had so far this year.
And again, because of the wet May, as we were talking earlier, it seemed like spring lasted all the way until June. Yeah. We got the monsoon coming here now in the next few weeks or so. Technically it's here now, but we know it's not quite here yet.
Right.
I mean, we could escape some big time trouble this go around.
We should. We're looking at about the next 2 or 3 weeks. The big concern with the fire guys I've talked to is the monsoon coming in, and ahead of it, the dry lightning. Looks like Flagstaff could start seeing some thunderstorms later on this weekend. Southeastern Arizona, maybe earlier than that. Dry lightning is what you heard about most at Kearney, even though it's not what started the fire, but that's what they were concerned about with it coming in, on the monsoon, hitting somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, building up a head of steam and getting rolling. The good news is right now we have a lot of firefighters in the state. California has a fire, Washington, Alaska have fires, but right now we have all the manpower, all the equipment we need in the state. It's going to start fanning out as we go along with the fire season.
The biggest concern right now, higher elevation or lower elevation?
Lower right now. Desert areas, which are basically cooked by this 115 degree, 110 degree weather. It moves up 4,000 or 5,000 feet. I mean, there's some concerns in the high country, especially, as it's been drying out. Flagstaff was having record temperatures too. So things are dry up there, but they're not as dry as they have been in the past.
Yeah, because usually when you have a wet winter, the low-lying deserts will get all that brush, all those wild flowers, I should say. Yeah. They dry up, there goes the fire season.
Well, we had, two desert bloom seasons, basically. And then we had those late May rainfalls, and it fueled more growth, and that's what's burning, or what will burn once it goes, more than the high country, at least early on.
The slow start, could that mean a prolonged fire season?
Hopefully it will be short, because ordinarily we're in fire restrictions weeks ahead of where we are right now. Monsoon, it's officially underway by the calendar, but if you just go first week in July, the window has been narrowed, because we're in 3rd week now of June. So from the time the rains get here, it's closed. So the window has closed a lot on the fire season. So we're better off than we have been in the past. And that's not to say we won't have some serious fires. We could have some fairly large fires. Not totally ruling it out, but not on the scale that we've seen in the past.
Suppression efforts in the wintertime and the non-fire season, how are those going around the state? Are they making a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's several projects around the state right now that think that thinning projects have worked better. I think that, there's a lot, 4Fry initiative
Yes.
is underway, well underway. They still have miles to go on that, but they're making progress there. So the efforts being made to, thin out the forest, to do a lot more prescribed burning. There's several prescribed burns up north right now ahead of the fire season. So yeah, they're moving right along.
And as you mentioned, one more thing on this regarding firefighters, they're all here right now, but as the West continues to burn, they're going to be going all over the place. There has to be a concern that if we do get hit with something here in the next few weeks, we got to hope these folks are still around to help.
California is in as bad of shape as I've ever seen, and it really moves up the West Coast. Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, inland you go into Utah. But California is absolutely the gold standard for bad fire conditions right now. They have the big fire outside of Big Bear Lake right now.
Yeah.
Probably the first of many serious fires they're going to be dealing with. Horrific drought over there.
And as the summer goes on, things usually get worse for them. We have the monsoon. They don't.
They don't. And this is going to be months out. Weather forecasters are forecasting a fairly wet El Nino to come in. Good news for Arizona if it delivers. Rain, snow, in better amounts than we've had. We haven't had a good winter in 5 years.
Yeah.
The last one was 2010. So we need that El Nino moisture in here.
All right, Jim, let's hope that things are quiet this year, as quiet as we've seen it in quite a while.
Yeah.
Good to have you here. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Ted.
Advertisers and marketers are increasingly using social media to get their messages out, but the growth of sites like Facebook and Twitter are leading the Federal Trade Commission to issue new guidelines for social and digital media. Here with more is John Norling, an attorney from Jennings, Strauss & Salmon. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ted. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so FTC is updating guidelines. Is this just for online, just for social media? What's going on here?
Well, the FTC's recently issued the guidelines specifically directed at online media and our online advertising and social media. The digital marketing industry in the United States is quickly approaching $50 billion. And it's expected that by 2016, it'll surpass, the money spent on digital advertising will surpass the money spent on TV advertising now.
My goodness.
So right now, businesses are operating in a vacuum. They don't have the guidance until recently.
And this was the first time, I think the first update on ads and marketing, how many years?
Well, it depends which you look at.
Yeah.
The most recent update was on the endorsements side of things, and that was, I think, the first since 2010. The guidelines for online advertising, what the FTC calls the .com advertising, is that was updated for the first time since the year 2000.
Wow, time for an update.
In the technology world, you're right.
You're no kid. Okay, so the new guidelines, the emphasis I think would be rather obvious. Tell the truth.
Absolutely.
Don't be misleading or don't lie, correct?
Absolutely. Truth in advertising, that's a theme that prevails everything. The new guidelines aren't the law. And I want to make that clear, is the guidelines that the FTC has offered are just that, guidelines. It's the FTC's interpretation of what it takes to comply with the law. The actual law that the FTC enforces is called the Federal Trade Commission Act, the FTC Act. And that has a very broad statute that the FTC uses, and it declares anything that is deceptive or unfair as an unlawful practice. Well, it's a pretty broad statement.
Yeah.
So the FTC needs to issue some guidelines to tell the businesses how do you advertise and what constitutes deception or what constitutes unfairness.
So in the online world, is what constitutes as being unfair or deceptive any different than radio, television?
No, the difference is how it's conveyed, because let's say a Twitter advertisement, we only have 140 characters, so how do you make the proper disclosures in that? You know, you can have somebody issue a tweet that says, I've lost 40 pounds on this diet pill I've taken one day a week for 2 days. Well, that's an endorsement. It needs to be specified as such, and you need to have a hashtag ad or something in there to show that as an advertisement.
How about substantiating claims? Let's say that I've taken this pill and I'm now a Superman or something like that.
Absolutely.
How much substantiation has to occur?
Well, the advertiser needs to have the empirical data to back up its claims. But in the ad itself, if let's take the weight loss scenario, if you have a claim that says I lost 60 pounds in 4 weeks by taking this pill, if those results are not typical, then that ad needs to say typical results would be 1 pound a week.
Yeah.
Or it needs to disclaim that this person exercised 6 hours a day, drank the protein shakes and only ate raw vegetables. Something to show the consumer that those advertisements are, or those results aren't typical.
How are these violations found or reported, and how are they endorsed? If anyone can go online and say that this weight loss plan works, who enforces, who investigates, who watches over this kind of thing?
Well, a number of different areas. One is because it's online now, it's low-hanging fruit for the regulators. They can sit in their office and they can surf the net and they can look at these advertisements and basically from the comfort of their own desk find a host full of violations. It's not like the old days when everybody depended on direct mail marketing, where they actually had to get their hand on a piece of the mail collateral. Another way that people get, or the advertising violations get found, is by competitors.
Yeah.
Competitors turn each other in. It's a cutthroat business out there.
I bet they do. What happens? What are the consequences here? First offense, second offense, any difference?
Yes and no. It depends on the gravity of the issue. Under the Federal Trade Commission Act, the FTC can issue what's called a civil investigative demand, where they will send out basically a subpoena for every ad you've run the last 5 years. It's very extensive and very exhaustive. And then they'll do their investigation. And sometimes it takes 2-3 years for the investigation. That typically ends up with some type of settlement through a consent judgment, where the parties will agree that the advertiser will not take certain actions, won't violate the law, will comply with the law. And that's typically it. However, sometimes they include reporting requirements. Some in the automotive sector have required reporting requirements where the advertiser has to submit quarterly reports for 20 years to the FTC. And then if they step afoul or run afoul of the consent order, then it could lead to a violation of $16,000 per day per violation.
My goodness. How often do businesses get hit for this?
Well, just a short glance this morning, I saw Anheuser-Busch, Gerber, Land's End, and GNC all embroiled in some type of advertising enforcement action, whether it be instituted by the Federal Trade Commission or a state Attorney General's office, or a private consumer class action.
Interesting. All right, so with that in mind, whether you're a big business like the ones you just mentioned, or a small business, and you're out there watching right now and you're going, well, I want to use Twitter, I want to use Facebook and digital media to get my message out, what kind of advice do you have?
Truth in advertising.
Yeah.
Make sure that you convey, or your advertisements are truthful, not misleading, that they can be substantiated. If you make a claim, you better have the backup to support it, and that it is clear and understandable. If there's a material fact that would be relevant to the consumer's buying decision, make sure it's in the ad, make sure it's disclosed properly. You know, they talk about the disclosures being clearly and conspicuously made. You don't bury it in the fine print at the bottom. You don't put it, if it's an audio ad, you don't put it in the rapid fire disclosures where nobody can understand it. it's red at light speed. Make sure that it's included in the text of the ad if possible, and make sure it's as clear and as easily understandable as possible.
That all makes sense. That all seems like common sense. So why did it need I mean, what happened between 2002 and now? What needed updating? Or 2000, I should say.
Well, 2000, Twitter wasn't
I guess that's
around.
true, right? Yeah.
YouTube wasn't utilized. I mean, the shift to digital marketing has been a recent phenomenon. People live on their cell phones. People live on their mobile devices. Advertisers know that that's where they need to get the ads out. People aren't reading the newspapers anymore. You can see that by the thickness of the newspapers. With the digital marketing going to exceed the spend on television advertising by as early as next year, they're estimating that the spend will be 30 to 40% of the advertising dollar by 2019 will be digital.
So regardless of the platform, just tell the truth.
Absolutely.
All right. Good to have you here. Thanks
My
for
pleasure.
joining us.
Thank you.
This edition of Arizona Technology and Innovation looks at a project that's designed to revolutionize the way engineers are educated. Joining us now is Ann McKenna, Director of the Polytechnic School and ASU's Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, revolutionizing engineering education. That's a lot going on here. What's happening?
Sure. So last year, the National Science Foundation put out a call to request proposals for academic units to propose revolutionary ideas to transform the way we approach engineering education. And also, particularly in the context of creating the professional formation of engineers. So National Science Foundation has funded a lot of work to do interesting things with the curriculum, but they also recognize that they want it to be lasting change. And so they put it in the language of revolutionizing so that proposals were bold.
Yeah.
Really proposing some interesting things. And so we were selected to receive one of these awards from the National Science Foundation, which we're excited about. So for us, we have a solid foundation in the Polytechnic School and within Fulton to approach teaching and learning from a project-based perspective. So what we said is, well, okay, so that's good, we've made some progress, but how can we really infuse this throughout the school such that the courses that have been resistant to change for many years, that we can impact those as well. And so it's this idea of changing throughout the curriculum, revolutionizing the way we educate the professional formation of engineers, and bringing in an entrepreneurial mindset to do so. And so to really try and understand the ecosystem within which change happens. And so it's one of the differentiators of our project is to really focus on what that ecosystem is so that we make sure that whatever we do takes into account the entire system.
So basically we're talking about a new kind of learning environment here. And when you say entrepreneurial, it sounds like risk-taking a big factor here?
Yes, so exactly. So when you think about startups in the entrepreneurial world, they're very risky because there's a lot of uncertainty whether or not they're going to succeed. And so one of the things that we've done is we've borrowed some tools from the entrepreneurial world, in particular what we call the business model canvas, which really does lay out all of the factors that are within a system that you need to think about. One in particular is really understanding what the value is. And so the more you can understand what your value proposition is and who your users and stakeholders are in that system, you have more potential for really designing something that has impact. And so that's the entrepreneurial piece, and putting in place the support, for example, partners and channels and key resources, which are all part of the ecosystem, and making sure you identify what those are so that the revolution can last beyond the individuals.
Well, and I know this sounds different than traditional engineering education, but sometimes traditional engineering education can result in some pretty good things. So how do you make sure that these all sound like big ideas and very creative and innovative, but how do you make sure that people are being educated to be engineers?
So what we don't lose sight of is that there are fundamental knowledge and skills that are important in the engineering profession. So we're not losing sight of what students need to learn to be successful. And one of the things that we've done to make sure that we get input, we have an advisory board, so we have industry who's giving us input. And so the concepts, you're correct, the concepts are there, the concepts are important, but the way in which you engage students in learning those concepts can be more effective, particularly as we think about how do we make sure that we have students who are being recruited into engineering and that want to stay in engineering as a profession, so that we can continue to produce individuals who can tackle the challenges, the technological challenges that we're facing.
I would imagine you would start with getting students involved in real life and meaningful
Yes.
problems, issues.
Yes.
Correct?
That's true, and students in the Fulton schools and in the Polytechnic School are excited by actually the idea of being innovative. So what engages them, what excites them about engineering is that there's these opportunities to be involved, to be innovative, and really bringing students in. So part of what we're proposing as part of our proposal is a key partner in our ecosystem is students. And so if we want change to last, it's partly driven by students. And so we make sure we have them engaged in our activities and actually working with the faculty
Right.
as we make changes to courses and curriculum.
Is there a question in the past, was there a question in the past, regarding you come into engineering school and you got to go from A to B till you get to C to D and on the whole way down, as opposed to you come into the engineering education environment and you are an engineer from day one?
Exactly. So yes, so one of the mottos that we have in Fulton is that you are an engineer from day one, meaning we're not going to wait for you to do some of the fun and exciting stuff before you learn this topic and this topic. And actually what we know from doing a lot of research and education is that you learn by doing, you learn by applying, and that's how you develop a robust understanding. It's not learning it in lockstep sequence, it's learning it as you need to apply it. So yes, we believe in that. Students from day one, they engage in projects, they engage with industry, and we want to continue to advance that as part of the revolution.
Does engineering education need a revolution?
So there have been aspects to it that have been resistant to change. And so the National Science Foundation has recognized that. And part of why they wanted to fund schools to engage in this revolution. And in particular, we have fairly significant grand challenges that we're trying to develop solutions to. And we really need to build a larger and more effective workforce to take on these challenges. So one of the challenges in engineering in particular is to make sure that we have a good group of new students coming in, and also a diverse group of students that perhaps would not have been interested in a more traditional approach, but would be interested in actually making a difference, taking their knowledge and applying it in meaningful ways right from the very beginning. And so making the profession a little bit more attractive to the next generation of students, and then keeping them in and then having them be successful.
Well, it sounds like the bottom line here is creating a culture of change. Congratulations on getting this grant, and good luck.
Well,
Good to
thank
have
you.
you here.
Thank you.
Tuesday on Arizona Horizon, Department of Child Safety Director Greg McKay will join us in studio to discuss his vision for the office as well as recent high-profile child abuse cases. That's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. And a reminder, if you want to watch tonight's show again or see any previous episodes of Arizona Horizon or see what we have in store for the future, look us up online, azpbs.org/horizon. That's azpbs.org/horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
ASU's Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering strive to advance research, education, and industry to transform our economy. Ideas, talent, and technology for Arizona. You can learn more at engineering.asu.edu/TV.